This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, we now bring you a discussion on Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana. The participants are Dr. Tajamul Haq, agriculture expert, and AIR correspondent Shantanu Pratap Singh.
Sir, the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana has an outlay of 20,000 crore rupees and it seeks to bring about the blue revolution. So what obstacles do you see towards it and why hasn't the blue revolution taken place till now in India? And what aspects does the scheme focus on?
There are 2-3 major constraints. One constraint, of course, is agriculture marketing. Marketing in the sense, fish marketing, I have to say. Second constraint is the technological kind of thing, like what kind of fishes you breed and where you breed, under what conditions and all that. Third thing is that, particularly in the context of inland fisheries, I think technological constraints have to be much more than in the case of marine fisheries. Currently, as you know, we produce nearly, say, 12 to 13 million tons of fish in country every year. And fish production has increased over time, no doubt, but I think now we need to have much more production in terms of fish for two reasons. One thing is that a lot of fishermen are involved as a livelihood on fisheries. And second thing is that fish is a good source of protein and also phosphorus and all that. So I think it is very rich in that way. And people, in fact, encouraged to take fish, even those who suffer from some heart problems and all that, but not meat and red meat and all that. Already India has achieved, as you know, green revolution. We produce nearly 295 million tons of food grains today. Imagine we started with just 50 million tons in the early 50s. And similarly, in the case of fruits and vegetables also, we are producing enough. There is a horticulture revolution. Now, in fact, 313 million tons of fruits and vegetables we are producing every year. Is all more than what we really need. But in the case of fisheries, you have seen the production has improved, but not as much as it should. And also the food fish prices have been reasonably very high in the past few years. So in order to contain fish inflation and also for meeting the needs of protein, phosphorus, and it is a very nutritious food from all angles. So I think we need to have blue revolution. The focus of the government is on improving fish production, and for that, as you said, Pradhan Mantri Matsya has been launched. I think what you do, it is not just to say that one input, an integrated kind of measures will be needed. The mission mode, we need to do it, and for that, the marketing constraints have to be removed. The quality of fish seed that you produce, that has to be improved for multiplication of fish production, and also the yield of fish still is very low. There is a huge untapped yield potential in the fisheries sector. So I think this has to be improved. In the marine fisheries, there are several other constraints of technology that the marine fisheries people, they use is very outdated. The nets and the boat, the trawlers, all these things have to be improved so that they can catch more fish. So I think from all angles, I think we have to see. But then also some of the small and marginal fishermen, they don't have the capacity to improve technology on their own. The government has to give them some support, and that is one reason why this kind of 20,000 crore of this scheme mentioning will be required. And I think it is a very welcome step that way.
Correctly pointed out some of the obstacles, which is probably why one of the aspects of the scheme is highlighting forward and backward linkages. So also included in the scheme the idea of a cluster-based approach. Now, considering the Indian fisheries sector, we have very strong localized markets in areas like West Bengal, Bihar, other coastal states. So do you see this cluster-based approach having significant impact on India in terms of local markets?
That is true, but I think you need to do a little more than that. Cluster-based approach is important because in that case, you know if where it is produced more, you can give all the necessary technological, institutional, infrastructure facilities and try to see that you get maximum value addition from it through marketing and processing. And that was the reason. That will certainly help. But then presently what is happening is that, for instance, take the case of West Bengal and Bihar. Now, West Bengal particularly produce a lot of fish, but still they need more. A lot of fish from Andhra Pradesh that comes there. And even for Bihar, you will find a lot of fish from Andhra Pradesh. So I think not that there is no scope of increasing production in Bihar or West Bengal. It is there. As I said, if you have improved technology, the quality seed production, and also, as I said, some of the carp culture, prawn culture, also prawn and paddy culture during the flood season. I think about 20 to 23% of the kharif crop area in West Bengal and Bihar is really normally under water. And there, I think paddy and prawn culture or paddy and some other fish can be easily grown, and a lot of farmers will benefit from that. So there are ways to do it in terms of improving the farming system, in terms of improving the quality of seed, the quality of fish that you produce, and improving the yield, improving the market, improving the institutional framework of fishermen's producers organization. So far, that was one of the major constraints. They are organized along that farm producers organization. It will help them to market and get a better price. It will also help them to access better technology and also to process necessary some kind of primary processing to be done at the local level. So from all angles, I think this cluster approach, I think will be of great help.
Yes, and will probably the fish farmers producers organizations which you've spoken about, it is an aspect of the scheme and probably go further in improving bargaining power. Talking about the support services to fish farmers, you've mentioned technological upgradation, but probably delivering support services down to every fish farmer is another challenge. So we've also seen the concept of Sagar Mitras being introduced with this scheme. There were 3,300 youth to be trained. So do you see that as having a significant effect?
This will help immensely, I should say. And also, I think in the past you must have seen, when we talk of agriculture extension, we always talk of extension for crop production. Normally, both the livestock sector and the fisheries sector were ignored. Now, I think for the last 2-3 years, you have seen, I think the government has given some focus on this. Like even the agricultural extension support, the government talks about the credit support. And credit card, the benefit of it will be extended to both fisheries sector and also the livestock sector. This is one of the reasons why now at the central level there is also a separate ministry. Separate ministry in the sense now it is not the agriculture, it is animal husbandry and fisheries. In fact, and also the Department of Fisheries is a separate department so that they can focus exclusively on the development of fisheries sector for evolution. The government is in the right direction. Only thing is that probably you need much more money. And now during the COVID crisis, when the government from every sector there is a demand for extra resource, I think we are having a very challenging time. But we need to do it anyway. The demand supply situation has to be maintained for fisheries sector. And also as I said, a lot of people are dependent on fish production for livelihood. Their livelihood also has to be protected. And I will tell you that during this crisis, a lot of fishermen also suffered. The fisheries sector is one of the most suffering sectors. The fish price index, even the WPI of fish, the prices, I think it has gone down quite significantly. First few days, particularly in April, I think even though these activities are exempted, our ministry's orders say these are all exempted from the lockdown, but still in several places, marketing facilities and transport facilities suffer. As you know, this is a perishable commodity. Like at least potato you can store for some more time. Fish you cannot really. So as a result, I think people have suffered. They need to be given more support.
You've mentioned other aspects as well, but speaking in terms of employment, the government has estimated that this scheme will generate a primary employment of 20 million people. What type of jobs do you see in the secondary phase, further down the value chain being generated in terms of this scheme, the fishery sector overall?
This is all basically, as I said, in the transportation, marketing, processing, and also people who will be supplying seed and also which organization which will generate the new varieties from technology institutions to the processing sector. There is a whole chain that way, value chain or supply chain. And along the chain, I think a lot of people will benefit and a lot of employment will be created.
In terms of export potential, do you see the fishery sector as having export potential, especially in the post-COVID world? Because
you are right, huge potential it had, and we're exporting fish. Particularly prawn, we export to various countries. And Indian shrimps are liked by many outside world. That is there. But now that if we improve productivity, we have to depend on the export market. But because locally may not be consumed, and if there is surplus production and there is no local demand, particularly in view of the ongoing demand crisis, I think the prices may fall again, farmers again may suffer. So I think exploring the export market and increasing export of fisheries, I think will be very important. Potential.
Let's move on to the logistics aspects of this, sir. So, as you've mentioned, being a perishable commodity, the supply chain for fisheries probably needs to be really solid and streamlined. So what sort of measures do you think should be taken in that respect in terms of ensuring a streamlined supply chain even to domestic markets so that farmers do get proper value for their produce and there isn't much wastage? So what sort of reforms would you see? And the scheme has introduced several reforms in terms of investment in cold chain infrastructure and storage and other things. But would you see any additional steps that should be taken or any obstacles that you see potentially?
Obstacle currently also we have seen in several cases that sometimes we send shrimps to say USA or Japan, they return it saying that contains some kind of infection or some disease or something like that. So I think those things have to be addressed and there is a technology for this. The only thing is that some awareness on the part of the producers and also on the part of those who implement this kind of measures at the local level. So I think this will be critical so that you send your shrimp all the way to USA and Japan and then it comes back. It is a huge loss. That is one of the areas where we need to focus. Second thing is that I think also we need to do a lot of marketing in the sense, even though we export, many times there is often one kind of policy. This year we export and next year again we see, I think we are not able to export the kind of quantity that is demanded. Then if that is not there, then they have to depend on some other countries. And once that country comes in there, and if they manage things better, then we lose. So I think these are the concerns, I think, which we have at the international market, we have to address.
Right, and then talking about then fishing harbors and landing centers for fish, you mentioned quality is an issue with several of our exports. There might be an issue with regards to the quality of the exports that we are sending to these countries. So one of the aspects that the scheme has mentioned is probably looking at e-marketing and e-trading of fish and bringing in private investment into fishing harbors and landing centers. So do you see that as being a success, as opening new channels for this product?
You are right. I think private sector has a very important role and already I think some people are showing interest. In fact, in the next 1 or 2 years, I think you will find a major change. I have spoken to several people that companies. I think they are coming in.
One particular area that probably has a convergence with fisheries is inland waterways. And we've seen, this government take particular interest in developing our inland waterways. So what sort of convergence do you see with regards to freshwater fish and convergence between inland waterways and with the fishery sector?
Freshwater also, I think we have seen in the past in several cases, the quality of water the fish is produced has some problem. That way also the quality of fish suffers, exportability suffers, and even in the local market there are problems. Sometimes those who are conscious consumers, I think they don't take it. So I think we need also to see that the quality of water where fish is produced is of some standard.
Probably a stronger regulatory framework would go about in helping with that.
Regulatory, no doubt, but sometimes I've seen in many cases we have too much of regulation. Instead of helping, it creates more problems for the producers.
So enforcing quality standards without acting as an obstacle to the farmers themselves.
Yeah, exactly. There should be a standard mentioned and then also some regulatory framework should be there. But people should be aware of those frameworks and the regulations.
So talking about the overall impact of the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana, how do you see it as being different from efforts which previous governments have made? Because we know that this is the highest ever investment into the sector. But this scheme in particular, because it talks about all the obstacles that you've addressed, how do you see this as being different from previous efforts by different governments?
Previously also, not that there was no effort, but the only thing is that this kind of holistic approach was missing, and also the kind of backward and forward linkages that we are talking about was largely missing. And as I said, the awareness about the quality of water, the quality of seed production, and then also improving the supply chain was missing. I think this is certainly an improvement, and it will help achieving the much needed blue revolution for improving the livelihood of those fishermen, and also for improving the nutritious status of our people, and also export earning.
Thank you so much for joining us for this discussion, sir.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana. The participants were Dr. Tajamul Haq, agriculture expert, and AIR correspondent Shantanu Pratap Singh. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our website, newsonair.com. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks at gmail.com.